Alright everybody, welcome to the video. SIG Guy here. This is going to be an installation video for the MCarbo trigger spring kit for the P365. I just started selling these on my website, and like every other product on there, I really try to include an installation video. That way you guys can watch it from beginning to end and maybe decide if this is a task that you feel comfortable doing, and if not, maybe you prefer bringing it to a gunsmith and have them take care of it. So you're going to need the MCarbo trigger spring kit, your 365 obviously, and I highly recommend the 365 disassembly and reassembly kit. I do sell these on my website also. It's got some special tools in here to make this job very, very easy to do. So enough of the jibber jabber. Let's get started. Before we get started right away, I just want to full disclosure, this is my EDC 365. It does have all aftermarket parts on the outside, slide, trigger, barrel, mag release, base pad, but all the inside stuff, all the springs are from the factory. Personally, I don't want a lighter trigger pull on my EDC, nor do I want to run the risk of light primer strikes or anything like that. So if you do want a lighter trigger pull and that's something you really want, just make sure that you do bring that after you make your modifications to the range, and put several boxes through it, a couple hundred at least, just to ensure that it's going to perform reliably 100% of the time before you return that to service. So I do have lighter springs and stuff like that in my recreational 365. I don't carry this one at all. This is basically just my fun gun. So there you have it. Before we start tearing this apart and everything, this is not a trigger spring kit, okay? Although that's what it's called, there is not a trigger spring in this kit. It has three components. It has a new Sear spring, a lighter Sear spring. It's got a lighter striker spring and a lighter striker safety spring, okay? So those three components all put together produce a lighter trigger pull, okay? The only trigger spring really in a 365 would be your trigger bar spring, and this is not included in this kit, so. All right, now that we got that out of the way, let's do a 5-pull average with the Wheeler trigger pull gauge so we can kind of get a starting point, and then we'll do the same thing after we install this kit so we can have a comparison of a before and after. Okay, so the Wheeler trigger pull gauge, and first, as always, we're going to make sure we're working on a clear and safe firearm, so remove the magazine, lock our slide to the rear, physically and visually check, make sure there's no round in the chamber, no magazine, breech face, look away, chamber, magazine, breech face. We are working on a clear and safe firearm, okay? So we're going to turn on the Wheeler here, and we're going to do a 5-pull average. Now for those guys that are using a trigger pull gauge, it's in the middle of the trigger, pulling backwards slowly, okay, not snapping it or anything like that, to get an accurate reading. So we're going to use, as a reference point, in the skeletonized trigger here, this portion right here, the solid part in the middle. I'll try to line that up every single time on my gauge. Because you know if you put it way down bottom here, which isn't realistic, that's not where you're putting your finger, you can get a lighter reading. So we're going to put it right here in the middle. I'm going to pull back straight towards me slowly. At 6 pounds, 11 ounces. Go into that. Do this 4 times and we'll get an average. 5, 12.3. 6.3, 6.09, then one more. So our 5-pull average is going to be 6 pounds, 2.7 ounces. Let me write that down, and then we'll start disassembling this. All right, so let's start taking this thing apart. And also, I do have a very detailed, slower paced full disassembly and reassembly video of the 365. So if I'm going too fast in this or skip over a step that you really need to see, you can reference that video. It's on my YouTube as well. So let's get started. So we're going to lock our slide to the rear. We're going to rotate our takedown. We're going to release our slide. We're going to work on our slide first. Okay. So we're going to remove our guide rod, just like that. We're going to remove our barrel, just like that. And then what we're going to be removing is our back plate here, okay? So there's 2 different style of back plates, the new style and the old style. Here is the old style, so there's a little plunger in there. I'm going to pull towards me, and it's going to release my back plate. The newer style, instead of pulling it towards you at first, what you need to do is you need to bend it towards the center, so then you can pull it into this channel here and pull it forward, okay? Again, on my YouTube, there is a video showing how to remove both styles, so reference that if you have the newer style as well, okay? So I'm going to use a little small screwdriver, anything. You can use the punch that comes in the kit as well to put in behind that plunger and just pull it forward and then slide that back plate up and out. Ugh, mine hasn't been apart in a little while. So I got it started there just like that. Okay, I'm going to put my finger right over here and just pull it the rest of the way off. This is spring loaded. It really shouldn't come shooting out at you, but you never know. So I'll put that aside right there. And now here we have our striker assembly, our striker safety. We can pull this out to a point and then you can feel it start to catch on the spring. The striker safety is catching on the spring. So I'm just going to use my finger and push in on the striker safety and pull the striker all the way out. Okay. We're going to replace the spring here, but we'll put that aside for right now. And I'll slowly release the striker safety because there is a spring in there. I'm going to tip it on its side just like this. And I'm going to pull it out all as an assembly just like that. So you can see that little spring that's resting on there. We're going to replace that spring as well. Okay, so let's open up our MCarbo kit and take a look at what's inside here. Like I said, we have 3 components. We have our Sear spring stuck in our striker spring. So here's our striker spring. It's a lighter spring than the factory one. We have our striker safety spring, which is also lighter than the factory one. And then we have a Sear spring, which is lighter than the factory one as well. Okay, so we're going to set this aside so it doesn't get lost. We're going to get our striker safety. We're going to take our factory spring off, set that aside. It's best to put that right back in the bag so you don't get them mixed up. You can take a little dab of grease and put it on here if you want. I'm just going to put my striker safety on there, the spring just like that. And then it's going to go right back into this hole that it came out of. We're going to do it sideways. It's a lot easier to get it back together like that. Just like that. I'm going to press it in. Oops, not yet. I'm going to set that down because we need to work on our striker first. So on your striker, you have the spring here in these little plastic cups. There's 2 halves. They're actually retaining it. They're capturing it so it does not come flying off. So you can put this striker against something and push down. If that helps, makes it easier for you. I just like to grab it by my hand and pull the spring back in my hand. And then I can pull the striker forward if I need to instead of using a table. But as soon as I pull these springs back, you're going to see those cups fall out. Just like that. I'm going to release my spring slowly. And we'll pull our spring off. Okay, again, put that right in the bag so you don't get them mixed up. And take note that there is another little spring in here. Okay, so if you do ever take your striker out, a lot of times you're not even paying attention. That can get lost. It's a little spring on there. See it? This little guy right here. Don't lose that. Put that back in the housing and just kind of do this and you can feel that spring in there. So we're going to take our MCarbo spring. We're going to put it on here, and in your striker, you actually have a recessed portion here. That's where those cups go, okay? They go into that recessed portion, and then the spring goes up over the cups. Just like that. See how the cup goes inside the spring? That's how we're going to want to put that back together, okay? This might be hard on camera. You got to be quick because your fingers get tired. I'm going to pull that spring all the way back as far as I can. Pull my striker forward. Just like that. You can see the little recessed portion there. I'm going to put one of the caps in on one side. You really got to crank back on that spring. Don't let that spring go until them cups are locked fully into place, because that will go shooting across the room. Just like that. Okay, so just pull this spring back as far as you can. Like I said, if you got to put this on a table or something like that, get it on armor's block. I sell these on my website too. These are for the 320, and that cavity there is actually made for the striker on a 320, but not a 365. But if you have to take it like this and put it on the table, and then you can push down on that spring, and then that makes it a little easier on your hands too to get those cups back in there, okay? So that's the way it should look when you put it back together. Now that we have our striker all put back together, we'll put it back into our slide. Now we'll push in on our striker safety block. Hold that with our finger, just like that. And then we'll put our striker back in, just like that. Okay. And just so you know, if you look at your striker, this is the portion you're pulling in on to release your back plate. Okay. Right here. It's the housing for the striker. So if you have the new style and it gets all chewed up after a while, I don't think you can get this housing by itself. I don't think I've ever even looked for it or seen it, because SIG services the striker as an assembly, so you buy it all as put together one piece. Okay, just keep that in mind. If you do chew up that plastic piece trying to get your back plate off, you're going to need a new striker assembly and maybe that housing if you can find it. The problem was, the reason why they redesigned it is because the back plate was sliding down when people were firing their 365s. The strikers were coming flying out the back. So they made it a little bit trickier to get the back plate off with the new design. Okay. So anyway, we're going to push in on our housing like this. Okay. So we can get our back plate back up into the channel there, just like that. And we just push it right up in until we hear it click. It's locked into place. Okay. So there you go. That's the upper. Let's move on to the Sear spring in the lower. Okay, moving along to the Sear spring, which is located right here. So we're going to have to disassemble this whole thing to get that spring out. Again, I'm going to try to move at a faster pace in this video. If you need a slower paced video, please look at the complete disassembly and reassembly 365 video. So with the punch in my kit, we can remove our receiver pin. We'll just push that right out and set that aside. Okay. And then we're going to pull up on the back of our FCU and pull it right up out of the grip module. Set that aside. So I'm going to basically just push these two pins out, let everything fall out, and then just don't lose any parts. And then we'll go a little bit slower putting it back together. Okay. So first I'm actually going to remove my trigger bar spring, which is right here. And punch that's included in the kit. I have one right here that's already opened. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to hook around my trigger bar spring, and I'm just going to unrelease that like that. And I'll let that fall right out. Okay, and I can move my trigger bar down, let my disconnector fall out. And now I have access to the two holes that the two pins are in. Okay, I can use my tool again to push out the safety pivot pin, the safety lever pivot pin. And then when I pull this out, be careful, because that safety lever, that little guy there that flops up when you try to put your slide on, right here, don't lose it, right there. We'll set that aside. And then now with that out of the way, our takedown safety lever falls right out. Put that over here. We take our takedown lever out. Put that over here. Flip it back over, and we'll push our Sear pivot pin out. Just like that. That's the bigger of the two pins. And we'll pull that out, and we'll just tip it upside down and let our Sear and Sear spring fall out. Okay, at this point, that's as far as you need to go. If you are replacing your trigger, there's only the trigger bar, your trigger, and the trigger pivot pin left. So the trigger pivot pin's already falling out. But this punch here will fit right in this hole, and you can push your trigger pivot pin out. Then you can rotate your trigger forward, the top portion forward, push your trigger back, and it'll allow space for the trigger bar to come out. And then you can just pull your trigger up and out of there. Sometimes these fall right out. Sometimes you got to fidget with them a little bit, just like that. And really the only thing left in here is your slide catch and the little spring there. Okay, if that falls out, I'm not going to take that out. If that falls out, the little spring's it's not a pain in the butt, but it's not, doesn't just drop right in. But if that does fall out, again, on my YouTube, there's a video showing how to put this back together and your safety right there. Okay, I'm going to hold off on putting my trigger in and the trigger bar. It's one less thing that's flopping around on here. So what we're going to work on now is we're going to get our Sear and our Sear spring put back in. Okay, and there's a couple different ways you can do this. No one of them is better than the other, just as long as you can get it all back together. So when you put your Sear spring in, it's going to look like this. I'll zoom in on this in a second so you can get a better view of it. The Sear needs to sit right on the side of your, or the Sear spring needs to sit right on the side of the Sear. And then if you flip it underneath, the leg of the Sear spring is in that little cavity on the Sear. And your Sear might look a little different. There's quite a few revisions of this Sear. So if you got an older one, it might look a little different, but they all assemble the same way. Okay. So you can either grease this up, stick your spring to the Sear, and drop it in together. Or you can kind of do one at a time, which is the way I'm going to do it. I like to drop my Sear into the Sear housing. And then we're going to show you a couple things here real quick before we put this back together. So there's a little shelf here. And in my disassembly and reassembly video, I detail this just a lot more detailed. But that Sear spring is going to sit up on here in the very end. Okay. So I'm sticking this punch, which is a specific size, through this hole. Because it's tapered, it's going to push that spring up as I'm pushing this in the hole. Well, what I'm after is for the leg of that Sear spring to pop right up on top of this shelf. And then it'll be out of the way for us to reinstall our pin. Okay, I'm skipping way ahead here, but I want to show you this while it's apart because it's a lot easier for you to show you while it is apart. Anyway, so we're going to take our Sear. We're just going to drop it right into that cavity, let it fall into there. We'll kind of move things around. And what we're looking for is the leg of the Sear needs to be visible right in this little window here, okay? If it's forward over here, there's this cavity here has a wall inside. It's partitioned, okay? So it needs to be in the rear partition so you can see it right there. Okay, and obviously the holes will line up. And you can see the leg right there. So if you can't see the leg right there, it's because your Sear spring is like this. And the bottom leg is facing too far forward. You need to lift it up, rotate it around, drop it into that cavity. Okay, so that's the first step. We're all set there. And then what I like to do is take the Sear spring, put it this way, drop it right down in the slot, rotate it around, and then drop it in. Okay, so I'm hooking around the Sear, rotating it around, and dropping it in. And the thing with that little guy is it needs to be opposite. So right now the leg of my Sear spring is down in this rear cavity. It needs to be towards the front where I can see it in this hole right here. Okay, which I can't see it, so I already know it's not in the right position. Also, very important, when we flip it upside down, it needs to be in that cavity underneath the Sear. Okay, so if I'm pushing that up like that, and I'm looking through the hole and I cannot see it, that means it's in the rear section or rear portion there. So we just need to lift it up a little bit. And I'll use my pick, just like that. So now you can see the leg of that spring right in that hole right there. Okay, so now I know everything's lined up. I'm going to take my punch, go in through the back side here, I can use this one if I want to. It's a little bit bigger. But I'm just going to put that in there so nothing falls out because everything is where it needs to be right now. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use our Sear spring, Sear pivot pin. We're going to put that in through that hole. And right now our punch is going to be like a slave pin. We're just going to use this pin to push our punch out. And as I'm pushing with my thumb, kind of rotate things around, line things up. Just be patient. I just fell back out. Just like that. Just be patient. Don't force anything. Everything will fall right back together if it's all in the right place. Okay. So I have my Sear pivot pin in. Just going to check the alignment of everything. This is actually good that this happened because moving things around, my Sear spring jumped into the forward cavity. So what I'm doing here is my Sear spring is not laying down flat against my Sear. You can see it right here. And I'm trying to rotate it down, and it won't rotate down. So that means that putting this pin in, it actually moved up, went into the back portion here, and I didn't notice it. So basically push your pin back out, move things around again. Thought I was going to get lucky there. But I don't mind stuff like this happening on camera because it happens to everybody. And I'd like to actually show these things versus everything going together perfectly smooth. And then when stuff happens on you guys, you don't know how to fix it because it didn't happen to me on camera. So again, here's the little Sear spring showing through the hole. That's all I really care about. I don't care about the notch up here. It's not in the notch. All I care about is that right now, is that, because when I put my pin in, it'll rotate around and it'll go up into the notch on the Sear. Okay, so all I want to do is make sure I see that Sear, the two most important things. You can see the Sear spring there, and you can see the Sear in the back there. Okay. And then we'll put this back in again without moving things around. Just like that. That actually worked out perfect that way. So there, you can see the spring right there. Now my Sear spring is laying right down on top of my Sear. Now that we have that all reassembled, that is actually the hardest step in this whole process. So it is all downhill from here, or easier going. So next we're gonna set our Sear spring, and that's where this punch comes in extremely handy. A lot of people, they'll come in through the backside here. And what I mean by this is our Sear spring. We need to move that out of the way so we can put our safety lever pivot pin in. When I told you before, there's a shelf on the inside here. What we're gonna do is we're gonna maneuver this spring up and onto that shelf. That way it makes it really easy putting that spring, or the pin back through this hole. So a lot of people, and the way I used to do it in the very beginning is used to come through the backside here, and then with your punch, get underneath that spring and pull it up, and then put your pin in through this side. But when you buy the 365 disassembly and reassembly kit, it comes with this punch, which is perfectly shaped for this step of the process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in through the hole here and work it underneath the spring, just like that. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, because it's tapered here, I'm going to push it in. You should hear a click. 99% of the FCUs, you'll hear that click. That spring will jump up on the shelf. Every now and then you get an FCU that just will not cooperate. You're going to have to probably come in through the backside, like I was just saying, push that spring up and push your pin in. So I'll push this in. You should hear a click, just like that. Pull my punch out. Now you can see there's no spring in that hole. It is actually resting up on top of that shelf. Okay, next we're going to start reassembling the rest of this stuff. So I'm going to flip this over. And you really don't have to worry about your Sear pivot pin falling out anymore, because now that it's all set in there, there's actually a lot of tension on it, which is keeping it into place. Okay, so I'm going to stick my trigger in here like this. I'm going to push my trigger back, rotating the top part forward. The hole here on a trigger bar goes in behind there and on the pin on the trigger. Then we'll pull that back and set that into place. And then we'll put our trigger pivot pin in through this side. Mine's got a lot of rounds on it. It's been apart a million times, so things just kind of fall together and fall apart. So just keep in mind that might fall out on you a couple times. So now we will put our takedown lever in. Takedown lever about 7 o'clock. And I'm going to do this on purpose. So if you put it in there and rotate it up like that, and then you look straight down at it and it's not flush right here with your slide catch, it's not in far enough. So you need to rotate that again down to 7, push it in, and then rotate it up. Now they're flush, so we know we're in correctly. So when we have this pointed at like 4 o'clock, you'll notice there's a notch right under here in that takedown lever. Inside that notch is where the hook on my takedown safety lever goes, the bar. Okay, so we're gonna kind of hold that like that, put that in there just like that, kind of move things around, drop that into place behind there like this, just like that. You can see that bar is captured by the takedown lever, and it's in the back here. Okay, so our last step is our safety lever pivot pin and safety lever. Goes through this bottom hole here, which is clear of our Sear spring now. So what we're going to do is we're going to flip it over while hanging on to our takedown safety lever here, so that does not fall out because it's not captured by our pin yet. And we'll move our trigger bar down so we can kind of see these two holes here. The bottom hole here is the one our pin's going to come through. So we need to slide our safety lever in. We'll watch through the holes as we guide the hole in the safety lever, right here, down to this bottom hole. Okay. So the safety lever goes in just like that. The hook part forward, the pointy part down. Slide it in here like this, looking through those holes, lining up the hole with the bottom hole. Just trying to verify that is actually captured by my punch. Okay. Just gonna pull my punch out, and this pin punch that comes in the kit specifically goes through that hole. That's why it's that size. Okay, it's going to act as a slave pin. So everything's lined up. We'll just kind of flop this thing up and down, make sure it works properly, which it does. If it's real hard to come up and real hard to come down, it's probably behind the pin and it's kind of jammed in there. All right, so what we'll do is we'll pull our slave pin out just a little bit, so we can get our pivot pin in there. Pivot pin's going to be facing up, just like that. I'm going to actually start pushing that in. Make sure my takedown safety lever bar is in the proper place, because it's going to get captured by that pin. We'll just push that through, just like that. Now all we need to do is reinstall our disconnector. So pull your trigger bar down out of the way. This only goes in one way. Okay, we're going to slide that up. Just like that. Trigger bar goes underneath it. That's what keeps that from falling out. And then all we need to do is reinstall our trigger bar spring. just like that. Okay, so now we'll reassemble everything and we can get a trigger pull reading. We'll put our FCU back in our grip module, reinstall our receiver pin, just like that. Put our barrel back in, guide rod. If your takedown lever is down or up, excuse me, push up on your slide catch, slide release, rotate it down. Make sure your safety lever is pointed down, not up. We'll put our slide on, rotate our takedown lever, and there you go. We'll do a quick function check before we finish this up. So we're going to install our magazine, make sure it locks in nice and tight. We're going to release our magazine, make sure it falls out under its own gravity, which it does. Empty magazine should push up on our follower. Our follower should push up on our slide catch, locking it to the rear, which it does. So we'll release our magazine. Quick check again. Chamber, magazine, breech face, look away. Chamber, magazine, breech face. We're going to pull the trigger. We want to make sure we're still safe. We'll release our slide, point the muzzle in a safe direction, pull our trigger. Trigger works. While holding it to the rear, we're going to test our reset. Reset works. Pull the trigger. That works fine. We're going to rack it again. Take it out of battery. Should have a dead trigger. Okay, what we're doing here is a little bit out of battery. Trigger should not work, which it does. Okay, so let's do the trigger pull gauge on it and see what our results are. Okay, 5 pull average with the wheeler. Make sure we delete all our data. Again, in the middle of the trigger, slowly pulling towards the rear. Remember, our original reading was 6 pounds, 2.7 ounces. 4 pounds, 14 ounces. We'll enter that. We'll do a 5 pull average. 5 pounds, 10 ounces. 5 pounds, 6 ounces, 6.5 ounces. 5 pounds, 7.2. One more. Average is 5 pounds, 6.1 ounces. So there you have it. That's how you install the MCarbo trigger spring kit for the 365. Pretty easy to do. The results speak for themselves. So hope you enjoyed the video. As always, there should be a subscribe button right down here in the corner. So if you have not subscribed to my channel, I'd appreciate if you'd smash that button. As always, thank you for watching and have a great day.